What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. How's everybody doing today? So, where to begin? First and foremost, a couple of shout outs. Freak Servo, your console's on the way, buddy. Sent you the shipping stuff. And Rick, your case is on the way. This guy, yeah. Well, not this guy. This one's mine, but yours is on the way. And I'll actually tell you a funny story while I got you here, before I completely forget. So, funny story. If you happen to be watching, so I couldn't find any of my other ones. I have like 4 or 5 of these guys, but I promised you I'd send you one, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I took my Game Gear out of the case and packaged my one that was on the shelf up and sent it to you. And then the next day, I literally found my Paco cases of little nylon bags. So that's good. Got them. So today's video, I think this time, for the first time, a round of applause for me. I think I nailed the intro. I think I got everything right, which is pretty cool. So beyond that, huge shout out again to everybody on Twitter and Facebook land and YouTube. You guys have been amazing lately. You really genuinely have, and I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate it. It really means the world to me. I say this all the time, but I genuinely mean it. I do this because I love these old consoles. I love the vintage gaming, and I want to share that with you guys as much as I can. So, that's my whole purpose. But to feel that love come back my way, that means a lot. It really does. It hits me in the feels, so to speak. So without further ado, I guess we're gonna dive into this. I'm gonna switch over, and we're gonna take a top-down look at a couple of different Game Gears real quick. So, never mind this one that's in the pretty case. Never mind him. So, when the Game Gear first came out, lots of people rushed out and got it, and this is what they got. Well, an original one with the silly screen, the horrible LCD screen that consumed just 8 batteries and had the fluorescent tube behind it. That man, it was a terrible screen. However, it was color, which was huge because at the time Nintendo was still putting out the monochromatic, and I say monochromatic, it was a green screen, is all it was. But they were putting that guy out, and Sega released the Game Gear. And this thing, man, it was so very cool. But this is the one everybody got. Now, this is my own personal one, the first one in my collection, and then as soon as the McWill screens came out, I got one of those and installed that guy in here. So battery life on this one is much better. It's fully recapped and ready to rock and roll. The very next one that Sega released, and a little bit less numbers, was this guy. This is the Sega Sports Edition Game Gear, physically identical in every physical way. As far as the original screen, the button layout, battery drain, and all of that stuff, it's the same unit. This one's upgraded and recapped as well, ready to rock and roll. The only difference is, of course, the blue color on this one. But other than that, they play games completely the same across the board. No big differences whatsoever. And there are several revisions. There are VA1s, VA2s, VA4s, Majescos, and all that stuff. And really, so with the Majescos, what happened is a company called Majesco bought the rights to make the Game Gear after Sega stopped producing them. And they got the rights to it and the designs, and they changed up the board design a little bit. Now, when you get into modifying a Game Gear, the ones that you really want to be looking for are the VA0s and the VA1 boards. Now, how do you know from the outside? You can't. The only difference worldwide is the European models come with the Genesis Model 1 style barrel plug. Every other Game Gear in the States and Canada and the rest of them all come with the Genesis Model 2 power supply cord on it. So beyond that, they're all identical, and they're not region locked. So a game from Japan will play in a Game Gear in the US without having to region monitor or anything else. However, when it comes to upgrading them, inevitably, if you're going to do a Magic Screen or McWill or any of the other ones that are out there, you need a VA0 or VA1. You can do it on some of the other models, but it's incredibly tricky to do. There are no proper guides for them out there that I have ever seen. There may well be, but I've never seen them. However, the Holy Grail Game Gear, this guy right here that's in the box. So this Game Gear is a little bit more special than all of the rest. And I want to tell the story about how I came across getting this guy. So I was in my little world of modifying consoles and repairing them, and Game Gears are specifically prone to destroying their capacitors. They use, some people call it fish oil. It's an electrolytic capacitor, but they are absolute garbage. The worst of the electrolytic capacitors I've ever seen. And they leak extremely easily. And when that happens, they destroy the boards. Also with the handhelds and Game Boys ran into this problem too, and so did the Sega Nomads and the Atari Lynx and all the rest of them. If they were handheld, they took AA's or AAA's. What ended up happening is, as a kid, we would get done playing with our Game Gear or our Game Boy, and we'd put it down and leave the batteries in it, and those were the old alkaline style batteries. And so what would happen to them is they would, over time, eventually begin to leak down. In just a second, just to give everybody a heads up, I'm gonna have to take a quick, like 5-minute break. My wife is coming back. She just went to pick the kids up. And so without the dogs going nuts and everything else, I want to pre-warn everybody, because I didn't think she would be home that fast. So I will take a quick break as soon as she texts me and tells me that she is here. She just said she was pulling the neighborhood, so we have a minute. At any rate, so when you get an old Game Gear, the very first thing that you really have to do is check for battery corrosion inside of the back of the battery covers, right? And you'll see it'll be a greenish blue color inside of there. Some of them may still have batteries in it. Sometimes some unscrupulous human beings will pull the batteries out of them before they try to sell them, and then scrub the inside and then sell it off like nothing's wrong. You get it home, put batteries in it, and it won't work because, well, battery acid is eating the inside of it, which requires a complete tear down and rebuild of the unit, and usually a lot of work on the board themselves. The next big thing that goes wrong is those electrolytic capacitors. Excuse me, I've got a cough drop in. Allergies, pollen around here has been just terrible. Everything's blooming, which is great because I love spring and summertime, but it absolutely murders my allergies. It's terrible. So the capacitors will leak as well because they're just of a horrible design and a horrible quality. They should have never been manufactured. And so couple that with the batteries leaking inside, and what you end up with is a console that doesn't work. So it looks like she is about to pull in. I'm going to take a real quick break, let them get inside, and we will be ready to rock and roll. All right, I'll be back in just a quick minute. All right, guys, thanks very much for your patience. So the kids are back, and the dogs are going to be running around the house like crazy because they miss the kids and all that. You understand. At any rate, so yeah, the electrolyte capacitors, and I think I've got one over here that's semi-open. I don't know if I get to it. Let me see if I can reach over here and grab a hold of it real quick like. So if I can get this guy out, if I can, this is one that came in a pack that I was supposed to have already, no, he's not open. He's not unscrewed, unscrewed. And the other one is also not unscrewed. Okay. So just never mind that. So when I originally bought these, I bought them, I was scrolling around in the middle of doing some repairs to some game gears. I was scrolling through eBay as I commonly do. And I just happened to notice this one group of game gears that was for sale, listed as 4 parts not working, which most of them are, at least most of the ones I'm gonna buy. You know, a working one doesn't do me a whole lot of good, you know, unless the world happens to run out of all the broken ones. It doesn't do me much good at all. So I was scrolling through the pictures, and one of the game gears, there was a blue Sega Sports Edition, there was a standard gray one, and then there was another gray one in the back, and it had like a weird 9-pin connector wire attached to the back of it. Like, it just looked weird. Now, if you didn't know what you were looking for, it wouldn't stand out to you. You know, the likelihood of somebody beating me on this, or me not paying attention and missing it, extremely high. You know, I just happened to catch it on that particular day and be looking at it, and so I made a low bid on it. And I waited, and you know, a couple other people bid, but ultimately I waited around, and I ended up putting my final bid, and I think it was like, I set my last one at like 55, and I ended up winning the lot for $50 plus shipping, so that was cool. And I got it in, and it showed up and in the box and everything, and I pulled the first one out, and it was the blue Sega Sports, not the blue Sega Sports I just showed you, but it was a blue Sega Sports Edition. And then there was the other gray one in there, and the one that I was actually looking for was the one with the wire, and I pulled it out and immediately noticed something was very, very, very different about this one. It did not have a battery cover. All on one side there was an exposed circuit board on it and a wire coming off of it, and I thought, well, maybe this is like an old mod from the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s. Maybe this was a Japanese console and they had a different revision of a board. And I knew quite a bit about them, but I didn't know about, it's hard to always find all the information about the older mods that people used to do, and I thought, well, maybe this is just a video out mod. And I got to looking a little bit closer at the circuit board, and sure enough, there on the circuit board was a Sega emblem and a Sega model numbering scheme on it. And I was like, that's really weird. So I didn't even plug it up. I wanted to see what the inside looked like, and I opened it up and I realized it didn't have any wires connecting from battery terminal A to battery terminal B. So, and the inside looked really, really odd. Completely different than what I'm used to seeing. So with that, I'm gonna transition. That's the word I'm looking for. Transition. I'm gonna transition over to the video of me rebuilding, and I'm not gonna be on screen at all. Once this video is over, and I'm gonna pre-warn you, it's a little lengthy. I did speed it up about 15, 20 times because it gets a little long sometimes, but I'm gonna switch that guy over and we're gonna start playing it now. So here is me unboxing it. I did record all of the footage right up front, and I had talked to a couple of people on Twitter, and one of the people that talked to me about it was Andrew Borman, Very cool guy. Works upstate New York in a video game museum. And at any rate, in talking to him, he was like, please, you know, if you're gonna do anything with it, make sure you document it through and through. Have no fear, community, oh friends. I have notated it top to bottom. So what you'll see now is me just taking a look at it and noticing on the back of it that this chip is very unique. And I'm gonna apologize for the speed of the video, but I am going to tell you that I will post the full-length video of it later on. But I wanted to zoom in and get an up-close view of the chip numbers, of the model numbers on the chip, and everything else, so that you guys could see exactly what all this chip is. So once I pulled that out of the way, which did involve, I will admit, cutting of a zip tie. Which you really should not do. However, I did. So I had to cut a zip tie. It was an original zip tie, and I'm very sorry. So at any rate, once I opened this guy up and I noticed the board, I immediately got on eBay and I messaged the seller. What else do you know about this? What can you tell me about this? Where did you get it? And he told me that his brother was stationed over in Japan, or at some point was in Japan. He was in the military, was in Japan. If memory serves, he was stationed there. And a friend of his worked for Sega. And his friend had given this to him, you know, after the demise of Sega. And so he had it, you know, his brother had had it for years, and I guess his brother had passed away, and this was in his belongings, and the guy was selling it. So he put it on eBay and sold it, not knowing what it was worth. Sorry, dude. But to be fair, I don't really know what it's worth either. I just know that there are only 2 of them that I am aware of known in existence. I have reached out to Sega and no help. So diving in a little bit, now that we're actually taking a closer look at the video, you'll see a lot of me pausing and thinking. This actually took me about 3 days to repair, and I'm just looking at the connector itself, the way it's wired up, and then I'm pulling the schematics for the chips on the back side of it, which tend to just be video op amps is pretty much all they are. Video and audio, there's an audio DAC and a couple of video op amps on there. I tried to plug it into a Sega Game Gear battery pack, and that's when I noticed it did not take a standard Game Gear adapter. It took a Genesis Model 1 adapter. So I plugged it up and I got no response at all for it. Now I'd already looked at the board and I could see a little bit of corrosion, but I got to looking at the power board on it and noticed that it was just a little bit different than I was used to. Turns out it is center pin positive versus center pin negative. I believe that's correct. That it's center pin positive. If memory serves, that's what it is. So I ended up tracing it out and then building a jack for it so that it would deliver the proper power. And once I was sure it was getting the proper power and still wouldn't turn on, that prompted a lot of head scratching and a little bit of a deeper dive and me trying back and forth. Well, maybe it needs the video output board, maybe it doesn't. I'm not real sure. Again, I had never seen one of these and there was no information, so I was going very slow and cautiously. I did notice a lot of leaking capacitors on it, but they should work. And here I'm going around and testing the power board for all of the applicable power outputs that it should be, and I did notice that it was a little short outputting voltage on a couple of them, and also some of the capacitors here were also bad, which is no good at all. So I go around and check absolutely everything, know that I have to recap this power board, but I wanted to know before I plugged it in, again, you know, what power should it be? What amperage should it be? And is there anything significantly different on the power board than what I'm used to seeing? So the short answer is, other than the power connector being different, the circuit is slightly different, but it's close enough that theoretically, and I haven't tried it, but theoretically any power board from any Game Gear should drive it just fine. I haven't tried it, but theoretically it should. I go through now and I start pulling apart the main board to take a look at it, just to kind of document and identify everything. You'll see me flip back and forth a few times with my phone to check everything out. And what I'm looking for is I've already identified all of the solder points for this wire, the video wire that they've got coming out of it. And I'm just looking at the individual circuits, and I'm noticing you'll start to see a lot of this leftover flux on the board, which none of the later Game Gears have. And also you'll notice underneath several of the chips here, you'll notice, again, this is all original flux that you're seeing here, but underneath these chips, you'll see these little red things. All of the chips have this epoxy underneath them. Like they just don't want it to go anywhere no matter what, which is fantastically cool. But it's different than any of the other ones we get. So even if I were to try to hot airflow these off, it would be a significant challenge. And you can see in some of the footage there, some of the capacitor leaking that was going on. So I don't think these capacitors, at the time, I did not think the capacitor damage was going to be bad. I'd kind of already figured out that this Game Gear was maybe a development console because it was so rare, and even the numbers on the board are not listed as like a VA1 or a VA0, they're just not listed, which is really unique. But I kind of figured this was a developer console and had stayed plugged up until it was no longer needed, and then unplugged and thrown in a box, and somebody picked it up, and look at how cool this is, you know. Had taken it and then given it to a buddy, and then it ended up, you know, in my hands in South Carolina, which is, that's quite a journey. So what led me to thinking this was a developer console was I dug around a little bit, and that little bitty small board that goes in the back of it is actually a board that Sega used for their arcade consoles, or their arcade units. And what they would do is they'd output the video through this chip, and it would upscale it to, I think it's 240p for CRT usage, so that it would properly display on a CRT monitor for you when you were playing the game. And that's how they got it. Now, every one of these that I can find, Gaming Legends 64 over on the Twitterverse actually found one of these boards in an old Genesis development console, if memory serves correctly, and he traced it out. Mine is a little bit different, and all the information I can find is, for the most part, they're all a little bit different. Mine does not have as much epoxy on it as some of the older boards do. So I was lucky in that regard. Jumping back into the video, sorry. So as I got to cleaning up all the solder mess, or all the electrolytic fluid mess, I had my hands full. It took me forever getting in there with a little pick and just gently scraping away. Of course, the video sped up, but gently scraping away and applying some fresh solder, and, you know, wicking that away and applying some fresh solder, and you can see chunks of it coming out at a time, and then, you know, just continuing on step by step until I got down to a clean enough pad. Now, here's the tricky part. I now have in my hands a Game Gear development console. I know what it is, but I'm kind of scared to say it just yet, but I know this one's special. I know what it is. And so I also know at the time that I had it that there's only one ever known to exist other than mine, and that makes it, well, infinitely valuable, unimaginably rare, and something that must be preserved properly. However, if I leave this electrolytic fluid there, then the board will be gone. It'll be destroyed. It is already starting to eat away traces, and so I must remove it. However, as somebody that routinely deals with vintage electronics, I also know that electrolytic fluid will inevitably destroy even the solder mask. So if I leave it, the board gets destroyed. If I try to clean it up, it's already done damage and I'm gonna end up scratching the board in a few places. There's no way around it. If I remove the original capacitors that no one makes anymore, then I'm gonna have to put new electrolytic capacitors on it, which of course I'm going to do, but they're not originals. However, the originals don't work. So it's one of those, in the interest of getting this piece of hardware functioning, I went as delicately and as gently as I could, using the safest methods I could. And unfortunately, there is one pad that was unrepairable, and I'm sure I'll be coming up to it here in just a few minutes. And that really broke my heart. There was one that was completely, and I had to do a circuit trace on it to fix it. And once we get there, I'll point it out. I'm trying to watch this in my monitor over here so I can see what you guys are seeing. So whenever you're restoring any sort of vintage electronics at all, and something that has electrolytic damage on it, what will happen is that goop, that electrolytic goop, will get down and eat away at the copper. And when it does that, it'll first take, so depending on how it's laid, it will either eat the solder mask, which is sort of okay, away, or it will start eating the trace away, or both. However, the solder mask is not going to hold up very long. It just isn't. So very shortly after the fluid getting in contact with the solder mask, it will begin destroying the traces. I'm sorry, I'm trying to watch this on a tiny little screen. Let me switch over from studio mode. There we go. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry about this pause in the video. I had a little bit of work thing going on. So the best thing to do whenever you're dealing with electrolytic fluid is do your best to neutralize it and remove it. So the path that I ended up going with this was a lot of isopropyl alcohol and a lot of flux remover, so of MG Chemicals flux remover. So, and I've talked about this before, the reason that I use MG Chemicals flux remover and I'm such a big fan of it is, I'm sorry, I'm just making sure this might be no, that's not the pad. So the reason that I use it is because it's got a significant amount of ether in it, and the ether will neutralize and, well, it will assist in neutralizing the electrolytic fluid, so that there's the trace right there that's damaged. It was underneath one of the left side capacitors, and when I pulled the capacitor, it just disintegrated. And that's kind of what you'll end up with. Now, I might have could repair that in a different way, but I chose this particular path of pretty much leaving it there in hopes, and then jumping the capacitor leg over to another area in hopes that maybe one day in the future, someone will come up with a way to repair that trace that is non-destructive. Leaving that square open, making sure it's clean, and then jumping the capacitor over to the trace accomplishes the same thing, but maybe someday somebody much better than me will come along and be able to reapply a pad of copper there that is, you know, a fraction of the thickness of a human hair under a microscope and get it to stick down and attach. I don't know, maybe somebody can. First off, I don't even know where I'd get copper that thin, and second off, I don't even know that I could. I don't know very many people. I don't know anybody that could pull that off. Maybe there's somebody. So that's the reason that I went that route. But back to repairing electrolytic fluid. So first off, you neutralize it, and then you need to assess the damage by thoroughly cleaning the board. And there are a variety of tools. I am a huge supporter, you guys hear it on every single one of my videos, of the online best service toothbrush. I use it in this video quite a bit. You buy a pack of them, man, they're great. They're on the old Amazons. They're pretty cheap. You get like a pack of 1,000 for 20 bucks. It's an amazing deal. Fiberglass scratch pens are another good one. Although when I use a scratch pen on this one, I use the finest grit that I could possibly get my hands on, just so that I did as minimal amount of damage and scratching away as possible. And then once I got the pad clean, I would reapply Kester 6040 leaded solder to it, and then look at it. So 6040 leaded solder, that's a tongue twister when you're trying to say it fast, I'm trying to keep up with the video here, so I'm talking a little bit faster than normal. So 6040 leaded solder will have a really bright shine to it. When it is not diluted, when it is not have any impurities in it, it's very bright, very shiny, and you'll know it when you see it, is the only way to say it. Non-leaded solder has a very dull gray. Now, leaded solder, of course, has a lower melting temperature. However, that's what they would have used back when this was made. And of course, you can look at the pads around the transistors and see that dull gray. So that is that old, and it's just got electrolytic fluid around it. It's got impurities in it, imperfections in it, so it just turned that color. And the only way to write that is to clean, fresh solder, clean, fresh solder, clean, fresh solder, until you get all of the impurities gone, and then you can put the capacitors back. Now, as you guys see now, I'm starting to install the capacitors around the board, and I went to Console 5, which is my favorite place to pick up capacitor kits, even though, like most people that repair consoles, even though I tend to buy capacitors in bulk, I knew what capacitors go in, and it's a Game Gear, right? So you're gonna need a lot of 20 microfarad 16 volts. You're going to need the 68 microfarad 33 volts. You're going to need a couple of hundreds. But at any rate, so I went and I bought a kit for a VA1 and a VA0, and a kit for a twin ASIC. They're pretty much virtually identical, but the twin ASIC's got a couple of more, and the single ASIC VA1 has a different one in the right-hand side. My brain went blank. The right-hand side lower section has a slightly different, I don't think it's 16, I think it's like a 25 volt or 25 microfarad. I don't remember. Anyway, so of course Console 5 sent over all Nichicons, and what wasn't Nichicons was the only one that wasn't was the 33 microfarad, or sorry, I don't remember, I think it's a 33, but I ended up using a Panasonic Gold audio grade capacitor for that one, which worked out perfectly well. Now this, you can see where I had to bend. I lay mine out. You'll see all sorts of different ways of people doing it, and every way that most of the no talent hacks, the useless scum on eBay and everywhere else that sell these, the way that they attach them just absolutely drives me up the wall. Like, they'll leave the legs as long as possible so they can just lay the capacitor anywhere. I refuse to do that. I make nice tight bends and lay my capacitors down flat against the board as close to the original position as possible, even if it means taking a little bit more time in bending the legs. And I do that because there are clearance issues. You've got screw holes, you've got supports for the D-pad and the 1 and 2 buttons on it. And if you don't lay them down just right, you don't bend the legs just right, then the capacitors will be in the way. And then you'll have to bend them out of the way so that your console will close, at which point now you're putting stress on a solder joint, which is never a good thing, because while it is a weld, let's be honest, it's a soft metal weld, and it's just not going to hold up too much vibration or abuse. There it is, 22 UF 25 volts. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. So if you buy one of these, I've said this before you guys buy a Game Gear from somebody, or anything, it doesn't just have to be a Game Gear, ask them to see pictures of the inside of their boards. I know Freak Servo, sorry, I read across the room and I shouldn't have. He just bought a Genesis Model 2, congratulations for you, sir, from me, and I had without him asking, I sent pictures and videos of the inside of the board so he could see the work. I sent video of a working unit. I wanted him to see it. And if whoever is modding your equipment, whoever's working on it, whoever's modding it, whoever's doing whatever to it, if they can't send pictures and videos, don't deal with them. That's just simple as it gets. I won't, and you shouldn't either. If they're not proud, so you can see, I've actually in the screen, I've actually got some video of it slightly starting to work after capacitor replacement, but it's not quite there yet. But we're getting closer. Sorry, there's a lot of testing and trying going on right now and not a lot of actual functioning, but there is some you can catch occasionally of the screen on. Here's an interesting aside to this. The audio output on this. First off, the audio board is different than any other one I've ever seen. And it is loud, like holy crap loud. And never mind that it's got a model number for the board that doesn't match up with anything Sega ever did. Never mind that it has a layout. You can see it in this portion coming up where I lay it down flat. I'm actually fixing to take it out for you. So the layout on it is different than what anything else Sega ever did. Now these capacitors had leaked pretty badly. And so I'm going to go through and replace them all now. And once I replace them, holy cow, did that thing really come out great. Brandon, the anime guy, hey buddy, thanks for the comment there. Get some of these classic systems. Man, listen, if you get them, send them to me, buddy. I'll be happy to work on them for you. You know, I'd love it. Saturn and a PS1 that I would love to have cleaned, recapped, OD drive replacement done. That's not a problem at all. So you can either email me, my link on YouTube is in my bio. You can email me there. You can reach me on Twitter or Facebook sometimes, but the email address is classicconsolerepairs@gmail.com. So if you want to reach out to me, I'll be happy to work with you and hook you up as best I can. And hey, thanks, by the way, thanks for coming and commenting. I appreciate it. So yeah, so this audio board, it is so loud and so clear. And the minute that I got it playing is the moment I knew exactly what this console was designed for. So I guess it's time for me to tell you what it was designed to do. And I found a picture on the interwebs, and I saved it, and now I can't find it again because of course I can't. Yeah, Brandon, I'll be happy to do that, man. No problem. Just shoot me an email or a message, and we'll figure something out, buddy. It's no problem. I got plenty of free time. Yeah. So what Sega did is they made these, and they would send them out to an EA or to, you know, an Activision or whoever, and then Activision would mount these on a stand beside a CRT TV where the developers were programming the game. And that way, as they made changes, they could see on a full-size CRT exactly what the game was actually looking like. It's really hard, right? When you're looking at a 2-inch by 3-inch screen, it's incredibly difficult to see what the sprites are and to debug a game that small. So you can have all of the development hardware, the big console sitting there that you want. You can type all the lines out on the computer that you want, but not until you actually put a cartridge in it and hit play Can you see what the game is actually going to do, what it's actually going to sound like, what it really looks like, how the sprites are going to interact in the environment? You cannot tell. You can guess, you can get close, but you'll never really know. And so that's what these were for. I'm sure that there were a bunch of these made, I'm confident. However, like I said, this is the second one that I have been able to track down any proof of its actual existence. So the reason the audio was so loud is, well, you got to imagine, especially back in the 80s, you got an office full of guys listening to Guns N' Roses, you know, and partying and drinking, and well, you know, you need the thing to really crank up, and I'm telling you, this thing is so loud, it's insane. So, yeah, there you go. So this is just me doing a little bit more work on the audio board and the power board to get him functional. And I'm going to try to find the clip once this video's done of it playing the audio. It's so loud I had to turn it down, which, you know, if it's too loud, you're too old. But you know, hey, we're all old at this point, I guess, right? But yeah, so that's what this console was for. That's what its purpose was. And so I assumed, and again, I'm making a lot of assumptions. I assume that there were several made. I'm guessing. How many though? I don't know. How many survive? 2 that I'm aware of. And here's what I'll tell you. If you ever get your hands on one, the only way that you'll know from the outside is it'll have a cable coming out of it. I did find 2, and you'll see me going through them right now. Several of the capacitors and resistors on the audio board had been just destroyed by corrosion. So I did end up having to replace a couple of those guys. I tried to, a lot of them, so those are ceramic styles, and a lot of them are not, hey, Brandon, listen, thanks for coming by, man. Go take care of your business. We'll see you in a little bit, buddy. I do appreciate you coming by, though. Shoot me a message, and we'll get together and work something out, buddy. Have a good one. Sorry, where was I? Brain went blank for a minute. It's completely gone. Whatever I was talking about, Brandon, you ruined it for me. No, so yeah, so a lot of the capacitors and the resistors, they're ceramics, and so electrolytic fluid will not so much damage the component as it will damage the attachment points that attach it to the board, so the end caps of it. So with some of these, I was able to put them under a microscope and repair them, and some of them I was not able to do that, so I had to replace them. This is one of those sections here you can see me working on pretty intently, by the way, of a trace on the audio board that was just so bad. Fortunately, I got incredibly lucky here. It did not completely destroy all of the solder mask. It just destroyed the trace, so I had to rebuild a new trace. The way you do that is you gently scratch away to underneath the solder mask until you expose all of the copper trace below it, gently, very gently, because if you go too deep, you'll end up destroying the copper trace, which is paper, thinner than a piece of paper. At any rate, so yeah, so you do that, you build it up, and then you apply a thin coat of solder, fresh solder over it. That heals it, and then you go back in and coat that with, personally, I prefer to use clear fingernail polish. It's a lacquer, it's fantastic, it does a great job. However, you can also use solder mask in a bottle. It's basically green lacquer enamel or green enamel paint that you put on, and then under UV light, it shows up, or it hardens under UV light and works a little bit better with some heat. Here's my problem with solder mask though. You're always putting it on with a toothpick, or because it's so fine you can't brush it on. And so you end up putting it on with a toothpick or a little plastic something, a little pair of tweezers or something. And so when you do that, it never looks right. And personally, I would rather see a lacquered, coated original board where I can see the work was performed than I would just a hunk of green goop caking over it. To me, it just looks better the other way. So that's why I prefer to use fingernail polish on it. So you guys can see I've repaired that one little bitty capacitor that was there and put him back on the board. That was a total nightmare. You could see in the video footage the damage of it. Now I'm just doing continuity testing, making sure the circuit is correct. Continuity testing is a very fantastic thing. For all of you guys that are looking to learn how to do this, first and foremost, get a quality meter, but a continuity test is just, your meter will physically make a beeping noise whenever a circuit is complete. And so what makes it fantastic is a lot of times you can't get a proper reading of capacitance or resistance in circuit without removing the component. And so since you can't get a proper reading, you don't always know if the circuit is correct, but with a continuity tester, you can get a lot clearer of an idea if the circuit, the repair that you did, goes from point A to point B and doesn't have a break anywhere in between it. So continuity testing is something, there's a little bit of an art form to it and a little bit of understanding of electronics when you get to a deeper level, but for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward process. You touch probe A to point A and probe B to point B, and if it beeps, they're connected, and if it doesn't beep, then they're not connected. Problem solved. So I'm going back in and I'm reworking some of the capacitors. So I did not have the capacitors that came with the kit from Console 5 did not fit in here at all. They were the aluminum style surface mount capacitors and they would not fit the pads. So the only capacitors I had were some standard plastic electrolytic capacitor Nichicons that I ended up putting in there in the audio circuit, but they would not lay flat. Now I have since tracked down and found, and there I just flashed up, sorry I missed it, video of it working, but the backlight still not wanting to come on all the way. Yeah, so I have since found some more accurate capacitors, but I'm still not happy with it 100%. So once we get happy with it, we'll do a video. It's a matter of, capacitors have evolved over time, as all electronics have. And as they have evolved, they've gotten smaller in diameter and height. And there are several different designs and layouts that you can now get. And so some of these will actually fit the little SMDs. I believe they're going to be 12s, no, not 0805s, 1275s is what I think they're going to be. Maybe 0805s. At any rate, that's just a matter of me diving into it a little bit and figuring out exactly what's going to fit and work properly. When you deal with an audio circuits are a lot like video circuits, right? In that they are incredibly susceptible to capacitance changes. So if you take a circuit that is looking for a certain amount of capacitance and you increase, you can throw off the sound of the audio, the pitch of the audio, or it just won't play. The other side of that is it may be clearer. Or it may be louder. It may be crisper, so you may get better audio out of it by playing with the capacitance a little bit on it. The voltage really doesn't matter on capacitors, up or down. Well, up. You never want to go below the rated capacitance, but you can go up a little bit and it won't hurt a thing. You can go up all the way, it doesn't matter. Generally though, the higher the voltage and the higher the capacitance, the bigger the capacitor is going to be. So, I think I'm down to a point where I'm just doing some final checks and testing. Double checking all my work, making sure everything is safe. So the more that I got into this, the more scared that I became. I didn't want to. So you can inject voltage, right? And current, the amperage as well, into a circuit. And that is a great tool to help locate and find a damaged circuit or a bad circuit or a bad component. Here is the problem. That is a great tool on an Xbox, on an NES. That is a great tool on a PlayStation where they made 10 million of the things and everybody had one, and you can get them at every store, and you know, you can go online and find 50 of them. But when you're dealing with a console that is so rare, you could not get spares for it if you wanted. Now all of a sudden you're dealing with something completely different. If you inject too much voltage and you burn a chip out that you can't replace, then you're screwed. If you inject too much current into a circuit and you melt a trace, which can absolutely be done, now all of a sudden you've got a board that is you've ruined, it's destroyed, it's useless. And that goes even into cleaning the board. You know, if you are not gentle enough in your cleaning, it won't work. So the last capacitors that I'm working on that side over there now are the, oh goodness gracious, they are capacitors video out. And I had saved those to last because usually those never leak because they're not under any load at all. But I finally figured out that those were holding me back, and so I swapped them out. Also, the transformer on these guys, when you do a McWill or a Magic Screen upgrade, most of them will call for removal of the inductor and the transformer from the video signal, right? Which is fine if you're upgrading, you know, a regular Game Gear, but if I remove them from this to do one of those screen upgrades, do I think it would work? Yes, because I think the circuits are close enough. I think it would work. But if I did that, now I don't have an original. Everything that I wanted to do here was the goal was to keep this as original as humanly possible. However, I ran into a small problem with all of that. And while that is excellent on the surface and all of that, at the end of the day, and you're fixing to see me turn it on, and with a proper screen glowing and all of that, and that's going to be where that portion of this video is going to end because of the problem that I ran into. And I'm going to let this video finish up, and there you go. It is functional and working. However, I ran into a small problem. And while I can tell you about that problem right now, I'd rather go take like a 5-minute break and use the bathroom. So I guess you guys are just going to have to wait. However, I guess I'll see you in a few minutes. And we are somehow back. Yes, that was mean. And yes, that was a we'll be back after the, with the answer after the break. That's exactly what that was. Okay, so here's the problem. Oh, listen, Seacrest, jeez. That's hilarious. They always, TV does that in general though, don't they? I mean, all TV does that. It's like it'll get you right to the edge of a cliff. Right. We're gonna go pay the bills with some commercials. Unfortunately, I didn't have any bills to pay. I just wanted to use the bathroom. So, you know, hey, that is what it is, right? Yeah. So the problem. That's how I keep dragging this out like longer and longer. I generally hate the ghost adventure shows. I'm not a big fan of them. I find fault with all of them. They're terrible. But so the wife and I we've gone through all of our shows multiple times that we watch, and I saw it. So we started watching this ghost show, and you know these clowns are on there and they're running around doing their thing, and you know they're following hobby and their passion, which is cool. They should do that. That's great. I find more amusement in it than I do. You know, some like I don't know. Some people I guess find a deep connection to it, but I find it amusing. At any rate, they always do that. They'll get you know, and then this happen. Commercial every time. It's ridiculous. But so the problem that I have without dragging this out anymore is it still doesn't work right. And I don't know why. We're gonna open it up because I want to do that on screen for you guys. I want you guys to actually be able to see me taking one apart. And I'm gonna take maybe another one apart at the same time and hope that I don't mix up the screws. That would be terrible. But I'm going to open it up and let you guys take a close look at the insides of it, up close and personal. I think that I did get the microscope working. I did. Fantastic. So we'll be able to put it under microscope. And I'll talk about, I've got a weird video problem. Let's switch over. Let's take a look at this thing. So I keep this in this case. It never ever, well, it does occasionally leave, but it rarely ever comes out. I've taken that a couple of times to take pictures of it, or I get an idea in my head about how something should work that might fix it, and I can't quite get it to work all the way. However, I wanted to take a second. I'm not putting this on that. I'm not putting it on that. Give me a second. I don't mind putting the cord on that, and I'm going to pre-apologize if this orange microfiber cloth in any way throws off the color of the video. We're going to see if it does or not. Generally, I've got a yellowish colored one that does throw off the color of the video really bad. That's not too bad. We can live with that. I'm generally not this overly protective of them because it's just an old console, but I am very protective of this one. So unplug this guy. And I'm going to pull this up here and show you the actual connector on screen. So this is him. It's just a standard 9-pin. And if you guys look up in the upper, is it the left hand? Is it that way? It's over there. No, it's over there. Over there. Yeah, up there. Is the little mobile cam. And I'm trying to get a decent shot of him. There you go. So all that is the exact same inside connector that a standard Model 1 Genesis takes, right? So these literally just plug up together, like so. And then you take your other ends, plug them up to your TV, and you're ready to rock and roll. So, having said that, that is not the right screwdriver bit. we're gonna pull this guy apart. So what you'll notice immediately on this guy, and I'm gonna bring the mobile cam closer, and you guys will forgive that it's kind of sort of pointing at me, but hopefully I can get a better view. And don't worry, even if we don't get a better view, I'm still going to take this guy out and put him under a microscope on stream for you guys, so don't worry about that. So this side did have the battery terminals in place. However, when we open it up, it also did not have the inner metal shielding or the plastic shielding that all of the later Game Gears, the production ones, had. It has nothing there. So any batteries that were put in it would leak, of course, directly on the board. There'd be no shielding. However, in this particular case, it was not something that had to be worried about because, well, you couldn't put batteries in anyway because there's no connection. There we go. So here's our little chip. And I'll put him under the microscope in a minute so we can get a very up close personal look at it. And you can see, I'll get a better shot of this in just a second. I've still got to take out the upper security screw. So you can see on the inside of it where they literally just took these ribs that are on this side. Okay, let me switch over. I'll switch over to the mobile cam and make him full screen. So on this side with the battery terminals, you can see the little ribs that are inside of it, right? And if you look down, if I can angle it just right, you can look down underneath there and you can see the board underneath this. And normally there's a piece of plastic that shields that, but on this one there isn't. You can also see this did not have a label, and the AC adapter on this is SA150. Hold on. The AC adapter says SA150-150A-160A, 9 volt, 3 watt. It says model number HGG32210. I don't know if you guys can make that out on there. I want to leave that up there for a few seconds for posterity's sake, preservation's sake. So now I have to find one of my game bit drivers that I've taken off of my desk and put somewhere, and now I don't know where they're at, but I think I can get by without it if I am slick. Is it this one? Or is it the smaller one? The stupid game bit drivers, I can never, like, literally, I don't know what the problem is. Never can find the stupid things when I need them. Every other time, I keep them right here because they're the best game bit drivers I've got. And when I go to look for them now, they're not. Oh, I know where they're at. They're in my box over here. So I always find it interesting that this game bit driver is the same one that Nintendo uses. And actually the way that I got that was I needed a game bit driver for a Nintendo. So at any rate, now that we've got that switched over, so taking this guy apart, and again, you can see inside of here where they've just broken and cut these tabs apart, and it almost looks like they did it with a rotary tool of some sort. And then I'll show you the inside of the case, which is really interesting, in a second. Let me flip this over. And then I'm gonna unplug the audio and video cables. Okay. And the speaker cable, which is right here. I'm gonna set that out of the way deliberately so you guys can't see it. So what they did here is they just drilled a hole in it for this cable to pass through. That's all they did. They just straight up drilled a hole in it, right? And then they removed this so that our little board would lay flat inside of it and not be in the way of anything. So our audio and video boards that are on here, okay? Set him right there for now. So our audio, this is our power board that's on this side, right? And so this is also a power board, right? When you look at them side by side, you notice they're just a little different, just a little bit different. And if you'll also notice the jack on this one, so if you guys can see how small he is, and if I lay them side by side, now you can see the actual size difference of them. It's unique, right? And so as far as the layout of this power board, the capacitors, even though these capacitors have been changed, some of the transistors are a little bit different. Some of the capacitors are slightly different size. Can you guys see that? I'm sorry. That's terrible of me. Some of them are a little bit different sized, but other than that, they're pretty close. The op amp on this guy is the same model number with a different sub number, if that makes sense. So this one just comes out of a standard Game Gear. Any of them, they're all pretty much the same. And this is a MB37775. This is an MB3775, but this is 9051, and this one is a 9227 M24. This is a M98, so slightly different. The audio board, and here are the two capacitors that I had to kind of make do with, and this is kind of the best that I've got, these two. That's a terrible view as well. I should get those up there a little bit better for you. Yeah, these two guys are the two that I just kind of had to make do with. However, this amp right here is significantly bigger and more powerful by its model number than any of the rest of them I've ever seen. And all of these ended up being 100 UFs versus the standard version has some 16s, I believe is what they are, 16 microfarads, yeah. At any rate, so there's your audio board, slightly different, again, just slightly. However, and I'll wait till I get the microscope out so I can read the actual model numbers for you. Now, let's flip this over. Let me switch back over to the top down. And we're gonna take a look at the inside of this board. Flip that over so you guys can see that a little bit better. So, we've got all of this switched out, all the capacitors on it switched out, which, you know, following standard protocol and all that. As far as the internals, the only way that you really know anything's different is because of this wire right here. Now, I knew that this was done at the factory because, and I showed this in the video, this tape right here, okay? This tape is the exact same tape that's used in the video connector right down here. So the only way you get that tape is if it came from Sega, for the most part. I'm not saying you couldn't get it another way, but that's the only way that I could come up with reasonably for this to be done. Other than that, all the capacitors are switched out, ready to rock and roll. I'm not gonna take it apart any further than that, but we will put this underneath the microscope for you guys to see. Okay, so let's grab the microscope, let's set this over here safe, and let's start going through this board. Come here, microscope. Move out of the way, mobile cam. We will start with this one, not the security screw. Let's start with the one everybody wants to see first. Am I all the way up? Yes. Okay, so this little board, this little video output board. You stupid thing. Very first thing, of course, we've got a Sega logo. This is labeled as 315-5242 1302 Sega. That is this upper board. Now, all of the other boards like this I've seen have this epoxy coating, but it is so thick you can't see anything. You can't see the traces of this, and I cannot get a number off of this. Now, I will say I did not change either of these three capacitors yet. I also, so this little capacitor right here on the side, this little 10 microfarad 16 volt capacitor, I did not change him either. He does not appear to be leaking in any kind of way at all. So I didn't want to remove him because this board is very special. I didn't want to make any changes to this. Over on this side, you'll see Sega's logo, and then you'll see 8377942. That matches absolutely nothing in Sega's model history numbers. It matches nothing. So that is very interesting. Also, this 315-5242-1302, this matches none of anything in Sega's model number history that I can find. You flip this guy over, things get a little bit more interesting. So we've got Sega, and then we have 171-6089. I cannot tell. I think that's an 8. I struggled with that, but whether it's an 8 or a 0, it's not. It's an 8. I could not, when I input that number, I could come up with nothing either. It also has two very tiny capacitors here, right? I could find no information, or these right here look fine as well. As far as that, all the other componentry on here looks fine. There are a couple of spots for some other components that were never put down. You know, this is most likely where a transformer would have went, but it's not here. We've got some capacitors, some resistors that were also not placed on the board. Trying to make sure my video is crisp for you guys. This header is a standard Japanese style header that they used on everything. We get over to these guys. This is T9052H74HC1758. This is the video output, and then this is our audio output, I believe. I might have them backwards. Yeah, that's correct. This is 74HC00A. So basically you've got audio and video circuit inputting, being compressed and played around with, and then spitting back out on the other side. These capacitors do not appear to be leaking in any way yet. I don't see any corrosion. You see how shiny this solder is here and here? I don't see anything wrong with either of those, nor do I see anything wrong with this one. And so I would prefer to not change these until I have no other option, but I keep a close eye on it. And the way this thing sits in there, I'll know it's leaking because it'll leak vent to open air first. So that's this board. As far as the output, this upper board ties in on these legs on this side and on this side, right? Ties in. And interestingly enough, most of these, like this one, is labeled C6. So this is going to come and go most likely to capacitor 6. Whereas these two right here, then we've got C22. Some of them are labeled and some of them are not. Like for instance, this one right here is identifying as pin 6 here, but it's not. That's it. That's the last one. So I don't know. There's not a lot of information about this guy. There just isn't. And I can't find any relevant information about them. So, still working on that. That's something we got to work on. Let me take all of my screws and move them out of the way because I'm not going to put my game gear down on a metal piece. So, We'll flip, actually, let's do the back first. Let's do the back with the power and the audio circuits here first. So this is our power circuit, okay? So this is our connector right here. And of course, this is going to look slightly different than this one, right? So you notice how this one has these metal tabs on it, right? This one does not, that stick out. So these on the standard ones with the micros are way down here underneath is where it's really hard to drag this around on this metal, right? So there's where your test points are for your the center barrel and then the outer jack of it. This one though, you can see they actually come all the way up top, which is fantastic. Other than that, wise, where did I put my tweezers down somewhere. Now I can't find them. Of course I can't. Where did I put them? I use my tweezers to point with, and now I can't. I put them down a million times. I can never find them. Other than that, this is the chip that I was talking about. Some of these transistors are slightly different, right? So that's an M6 transistor. This is a ZP27 here. So M6 and ZP27. You switch over to this guy. So that's an M5 and a ZP0Y. They do pull up as different components. So we get down into here. So 361 capacitor, right? And this just took a bunch of going back and forth, reading back and forth between knowns and not knowns, right? Most of this though is the same. However, where things get a little bit different is the way current flows through this circuit. Let me think of the easiest way to show that. I don't think there is an easy way. I don't think there is an easy way for me to show that. One other interesting thing. So if you see on this guy, so you see these pads, right? Never had solder on them, okay? Never, right? Not supposed to, never had it, blah, blah, blah. You can see on this one, these are pre-10 from the factory. So this would be a transistor. This right here would most likely be resistor 15, not here. However, the solder was there, which again, probably pre-production. When we come down here and we see, there's our Sega logo. Now you can't read a bunch of it because the battery terminals are in the way. 8373 something 03. We come over to this guy and there are several revisions. So 837, 720, IC, BD, and it's just one of those like you have to look. I mean, I could desolder it, but I'm not gonna. And this one is just a little bit different, right? So we've got a pass, and that's another thing, by the way. So where is it? Come here, stupid thing. There you go. So here are the wires that were here and cut off of the battery terminals on this side, right? This one and this guy down here, they're just cut off. I mean, they're there, they're just cut off, right? And there's also no plastic piece to come up and cover this where there are on the older ones. Get over to the audio board side. I don't have one handy, but this is a 837 7400-03. Made Japan, blah, blah, blah. ICBD, Game Gear, sound, right? That old Sega logo. This amp right here, this is our amplifier. This guy is different than what's on the other Game Gears. He is significantly louder. I can't find a lot of information about this chip. Just can't, sorry. So I don't really know what to tell you because I can't find a lot of information about him. Other than that, and I'm just scrolling around again, mostly for posterity, I am going to eventually find 2 capacitors that will fit here and tie to these. This is the one that I showed on the video with the leg. That was really, I'm trying to get a decent view of it. That was really messed up. Where I had to tie this leg across to this resistor right here, and it's still not perfect, but I reached about as far as I was going to take it without replacing this. So yeah, there you go. So there's that guy. Now let's get down to the fun side of the board, and we're going to breeze through the fun side of the board pretty quickly because we just are. That's not even the right one. It's not even the right one. Oh, good. The picture's coming in great. Thanks. That is actually very helpful. Okay. So, starting up here on the upper side, so you've got all of the standard noise gates, noise filters that everyone has. There is a jumper, okay, that runs from test point, where is this guy? Sorry, test point 10, and he jumps over here to test point 11, right? They're tying 10 and 11 together on the test points. You also have 3 wires coming off of test point 12, 8, 9, right here. Okay, coming on down. Most of our other connections, so we do have tying into test point 7, and then we've got test point 2, and you can see all the damage in this area. I've got to come back in and clean this up some more. You can see some of the corrosion. I just didn't get it all the way clean, and you can see how bad this all looks. This is, if I had to guess, a big portion of my problem is right in here. However, here's what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to unsolder these wires until I had eliminated everything else as a cause. And you can see the soldering job they did here, like on this resistor. It's just shitty. Excuse my language. It's just shitty. The stripping and the soldering job, we will reuse this wire because it's original, but we will clean all of this up and make it look beautiful again. But you can see the corrosion that's underneath here. I really wish I could find my, that's not my right. Oh, here they are. Found them. So if I come right here and I gently scratch away at this, right? You can see it's coming clean. So most of this is just surface, but I am a little concerned about these guys. What will end up happening is I will probably end up pulling this. Here's the thing, this is all surface, okay? The board itself underneath it, you can see all the traces are fine. And if I come in here and scratch around, I can remove a bunch of this without messing in any way with the solder mask or with the lettering. So all of this is okay. As far as structurally, I just haven't gotten around to cleaning it. That's probably going to be another video. At any rate, sorry. There is also a set of connectors coming off of this guy. So they've tied, and I changed this out. So I did have to unsolder and then resolder this guy. And we gotta do some more cleaning in here because that's filthy. These were the last 2 I replaced before I got it to light up, and I think I closed it up after that point. But because I knew all of this wiring was going to have to be removed to really get into this side of the board, but this capacitor was replaced. They've tied to both sides. I'm assuming they're pulling power off of this capacitor, which would make sense even though it's not proper. It's not where I would pull power from ever pull power from. And then there's also one other wire that runs all the way across the board and lands at the opposite side board, test point 1, okay? So that guy's there. Moving up, these are our 2 chips that we've got on this board, right? Okay. This is the chip on this one. Again, just showing for posterity, okay? Coming up here, so Sega, IC, BD, Game Gear, main. So this is our main board, 837 dash, let me get it up there where you guys can see it. I'm trying, I don't want to move this capacitor any more than I just have to. We're just gonna lift him up a little bit so that we can get a view underneath it. That is, last 2 letters are 98. Not letters, numbers, dummy. First 2 numbers are 73. So 837 7398. 7398-03, made in Japan. No VA number. Usually here you'll have VA1, VA2, whatever. I do have a .2 down here in this corner. Come here, corner right here. I have a dot, and that could be a dot, or that could be a, no, I just have a 2. That's all I've got, just 2. I don't know, just 2, that's all that's there. The transformer on this is also green. They are usually yellow, but this one is green. Other than that, sliding over, the audio wheel is the same, or not the audio, the brightness wheel is the same. The layout with the inductor, the capacitors, all that stuff, this is all the same. The layout and this whole bottom section of the board over here is all the same, okay? And of course you can still see some of the corrosion in this area. I was hesitant to go too in depth. I want to be real careful with it. I don't want to damage it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I just really am scared to damage the board, so I don't want to go into it too much. I'm scared of it. I will say some of the transistors, like for instance this M5, is slightly different. So on the later revisions, you get like an M6, okay? Here. I haven't gone circuit by circuit and checked every single one, but I wanted to show that off to you guys. I'm not gonna take this board out because probably in the next video that we do, I'm probably gonna start actually working on the inside of this board. However, since I was here and I said I was going to, for comparison's sake, let's take apart another Game Gear. Oh, that reminds me, I'm glad I left that up there. So, somebody had sent me a message and said, after my last video, I've dropped it, and had said, sir, they didn't say sir, they said, you stated that the thermal goop, that Microsoft uses is terrible and should not ever be used. And I disagree with that statement, and just so that you know, Microsoft knows what they're doing. Here's the goop. This is the blue goop, the blue thermal putty that Microsoft uses and everybody else. Let me show you why. And they were adamant. You're wrong. Microsoft's right. Let me show you why, okay? This is just a standard standard JRunner board, right, that you use for modding an Xbox 360, right? Nothing special about him. So, I'm gonna take my thermal putty, I'm gonna put it down, okay? I'm gonna find just a piece of metal. This piece of metal will be perfect, okay? I'll even take a smaller amount. I'll be extra fair, okay? Take a small amount. Go smaller than this later if you guys want to. If you're watching or you watch this video, I'm gonna show you why this stuff is garbage. Because they blob it out, it comes out of like a silicone gun tube, right? And then they take it and they put the heat sinking thing on top of it. And it presses down, okay? And so what you end up with, if you can see in the upper camera, is this weird shape, and I'll show it to you under the microscope, right? Okay? What it looks like from the side, though, do you see the divot in it? You see the divot, right? That's what it's supposed to do. I agree. That's what it's supposed to do. However, when you look at this chip, okay, I have now blocked with this ring all the way around that chip. I blocked it. It can no longer get airflow to the chip at all. Now, does it need that airflow? It might need some. It might not. And each case is going to be slightly different. By the way, I'm cutting it down. I'm going with an even smaller amount now, if you guys can see in that. Look at the little bitty small piece that I put up here now. Look at that. Little bitty small piece. I'm just doing this for giggles because that aggravated me the other day. We're just going to put our little heat sink back down. Watching the upper cam. I'm just going to press down. I'm going to pull up. Now it has stayed on the chip. We use our tweezers. We're going to lift this guy up. Just gentle. Just gentle. Actually, leave it right back down where it was. Look, I have now restricted airflow all the way around the chip. Air can't get to it. Air can't flow. So on this little board that doesn't generate any heat to begin with, it doesn't really matter. However, you start putting this around VRMs on a board that is going to draw a lot of power, right? Then, and requires and needs that airflow, and now you're restricting the flow around the board. What do you think legitimately is going to happen? Well, it's just going to run hotter. I mean, duh, you know. So that is why I replaced them with thermal pads. It's not that the thermal conductivity of thermal goop is any better and or worse. It is that thermal goop restricts airflow. Oh, you know what? This one's all original inside. I haven't changed this one out. This is perfect. It's exactly what we needed. This one does not have a McWill screen. Perfect. These are for that one. I'm gonna put these screws up here with these doors. I'm doing this again just so that you guys can get a look at the inside for comparison of the power and audio boards. So if you notice on the back of this one, if you look at your layout and what you got, so if you feel around at this, there is nothing printed in this underneath this. And then there is a model number, right? If you look at this one, there is nothing printed underneath this sticker into the plastic, right? And then you have a model number. I don't care how many of these you pull out, this is what you get. You get a sticker. Whereas the back of the other one, of the Holy Grail Game Gear, it's got an imprinted thing and no model number. Well, no serial number, sorry. It's got a model number, no serial number. It's a huge differentiation. So we're going to take this apart, just look at a couple key differences inside, and then we're going to talk about the future and what we're going to do. So this one, couple of things right up front that you notice, okay? Couple of things right up front. Let me set this face part aside. Let me get the back cover of the Holy Grail. So, you'll notice right up front, first off, oh, you know what? I'm doing this. I did all of that. You should have told me. Why didn't you tell me? You should have told me I hadn't switched over to the top-down cam. Sorry. All right. Did all that. You guys didn't get to see it. Life sucks. Sorry. So, on the standard version Game Gear, you have this with these metal tabs that come up and hook into the top edge, okay? This one does not have that. It is cut off here already. Now, generally, when you do a McWill screen or a Magic Screen upgrade, you end up removing these tabs. This metal plate's already removed. There's nothing to do. It's already removed, which is perfect. Audio board wise, so do you see this amp here? Okay, and this amp here, they're different. Okay, you see this giant power MOSFET, and this one doesn't have one. Okay, you see these two small capacitors, and there's a couple other small ones here. Okay, this is a different revision altogether, but some of the earliers, this Game Gear, by the way, is a, you just wait for it. I'm gonna put it on the mobile cam, see if you guys can see it. You guys see it? Probably not. If you can, this is a VA1, okay? Okay, so power board wise, you can see we're slightly different still. Different main connector, okay? Other than that though, mostly the same. The inductor on this one is a little larger on the Holy Grail. You can see the battery terminals and the wire routing for those guys. But for the most part, you can also see we've got a couple of noise gates. See how small they are on this one, how large they are on this one? Minor differences, nothing major, no big deal, right? This board should run this one and this should run this one, but you'll also notice this plastic cap is not here on this one at all. Doesn't exist. That's pretty much for the back of it. Now, the money. This one has been recapped. This is the normal way that I recap them. And this is what I meant, by the way, earlier. I wanted to make sure that I was crystal clear about this. You see how I've taken the time and the effort to lay these out so that they are not in the way of any of these supports for the top side of our screws. You see how nice and tight they are to the board, and they lay in the same general position to where they do from the factory. This is what you want, okay? A lot of these chuckleheads will leave these legs as and put the capacitor way up here, right? That is not what you want. You want nice and tight, laid down close to the board. You want nice and clean, all that good stuff. Okay, this one, this AV connector was, or this connector right here was bad. I had to manually wire in from the bottom side of the board. The connector was bad on it. Not a big deal. That's just a thing that happens. Other than that, there's your differences inside. Not really a whole lot. Not really a whole lot. But again, this is a VA1. This one is not labeled. Ta-da! Ta-da! So, there you go. I'm not putting him back together right now. I'll put him back together after stream. So, I want to take just a second, get rid of this thermal goop before it gets attached to something important. We're going to switch over here. So, what is the future? So the first thing that we're gonna do, you guys have seen it on video. It does power on sometimes, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will, and I can't come up with a reasonable cause for it not, other than I need to go through a lot more circuit tracing and finding. I feel like there's a capacitance issue somewhere or a poor connection somewhere, and it's just going to be one of those things where I have to. Is my main cam not focused? Focus. I'm back here. Sometimes this thing just doesn't focus very well. I don't know. So, at any rate, yeah. So I'm gonna go through that. We're gonna clean up the board a little bit more. We're gonna change a couple of more components out and get it working properly. That's probably gonna be in the next stream later this week is when I'm gonna start working on this. I'm not going to work on it today because I don't know how long are we? Does anybody know how long are we in this stream? How long? Anybody know? We're almost 2 hours. Yeah, I'm not going to drag this out any longer. My streams always end up being longer because they're more technical anyway, and I try not to drag it out any more than 2 hours. You can see me all right? Maybe it's just my screen. I don't know. So I try to keep. So I've got OBS running over on this side, and then on my main screen over here I've got all my other stuff going on, but I try to keep a stream running over here so that I can actually see what you guys are seeing and hear it in my headphone. And the reason is because sometimes I'll get the audio off and it'll sound terrible, and I never know if I don't have it running. I want to make sure you guys can hear me, but I don't know, man. I guess at the same time, while I've got, I was telling you the other day, Freak, that I was having some interwebs problems, even though I have gigabit. I swear sometimes I don't know, man, it's lagging. I don't know, it's weird, which it shouldn't be, because I've got a pretty ballin' internet set up. I really do. But at any rate, glossing over all that. So, I want to get it running. After talking to, give me 1 second, just please bear with me and be patient. Please bear with me and be patient. Let me just go find it real quick. So the Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, talking to Mr. Borman over there. And I'm not going to go into full details about our conversation yet. They are excited to get it, and I want them to. Here's my problem, though. I don't want to, well, it was right there in the stupid thing. What an idiot. Anyway, I don't want to send it to them until I know that they can plug it up and it work every day, all day long, right? I don't expect it to be running like that, but I want them to be able to walk over and turn it on and show one of you guys, or some kid, right? I want them to be able to put their eyes on it. I'm not so sure about their hands, but their eyes on it in its natural environment, hooked up to a TV, perhaps with like a Commodore 64, an old IBM beside it. He's got some great ideas of a display that he'd like to do. I'm not sending it to them yet for the reason that it's not 100% yet. And I'm also not sending it to them yet because they don't have a good spot for it due to some current remodeling they're doing. But he's got some great ideas and all that. The other side of that is before I send it off and loan it to them, which was always my goal. My goal was never to hide this thing on my shelf and nobody ever see it. My goal was always to put it out there and let you guys experience it and see it in every way possible. And interestingly enough, and I'm not going to throw any names out, however, I did reach out to a couple of other much larger YouTubers than me, and they pretty much all gave me the, you know, go away, which is fine, man. They can, you know, some of them are really good guys that I know of. Some of them maybe not so much, but that's kind of the reaction that I got. However, I'm hoping maybe, you know, I'm hoping to get this out there and let you guys see it, put it in your hands. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. Something popped up on my screen. That's a downfall of mine. I've got a shiny penny syndrome. Something pops up over there and I go, whoa, look at that. Anyway, so that's my goal. I want to get it out there. I want to get it where you guys can see it. But before I can do that, I got to put it in 100% what I would consider functional. And those of you guys that have been subscribers for a while and watching mine, you know what my standard is. My standard is nothing short of perfection, or as close as is humanly possible. And until it's there, I can't send it out. So I've now got it off the shelf. It is now over here on the bench, and that forces my hand in that I have to work on it because I'm not screwing it back together at this point. I can't be bothered. It's way too many screws to put it back together. There's like 6 or 7 of them. That's just a lot. So now we're gonna fix it, which will be our stream coming up. That'll be the next stream. We're gonna dive more into this guy, see about the other components, and see what we can do to tune them up and get them working properly. The full video, slowed down and at proper speed, I'm going to release it. I don't expect anyone to watch it. It is going to be hours long. So I don't expect you to watch it. The only reason I'm putting it out is for posterity, to preserve, for preservation, not posterity, for preservation, so that the record is there of all changes made and blah, blah, blah. Even though I've got even more footage than that on the NAS drive over there, to put it out so that you guys can see what all was done to it. The things that I found more in-depthly. Yeah, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up. If you're gonna walk upstate, I want to watch. I've been to New York a couple of times. I don't know how far it is from where you are to Rochester, where they are, but if you're walking, I'm fat and lazy and I have a heart condition, but I will ride in a car behind you. I'll even put little flags up. I'll put little flags up so that nobody runs you over, and I will record it if you're gonna walk that distance. Yeah, no, it's gonna get working, and we're gonna send it to them. And a couple of other places have reached out as well that would like to have it. A couple other video game places, museums have reached out, and I want it to go to them. I do. I want it to go. I want it to be somewhere where you guys can see it. That's the goal. Why have something, a piece of history, and tuck it away on my shelf? I mean, don't get me wrong. It looks really nice on my shelf, but I'm not. It's not for me to hide. It's for me to share. I feel, and I told the guys over there the other day. It's a deal. It's a deal. I'll bring the wife. She'll get to go see upstate New York a little bit. It'll be great. I collect vintage hardware vintage consoles because I love them. But there are parts of our history that tell the story about how we moved from the Magnafox Odyssey and the Atari 2600 and the Fairchild Channel F, and you know, to the NES and to the Genesis and to the Game Boy and to the Game Gear and to the Lynx, and then to, you know, to the Saturn and the Dreamcast and the Super NES and the 64 and the GameCube and the PlayStation and all. And there's those bits of history, right, that matter so much. Because we couldn't have gotten from, you know, we couldn't have gotten to where we are without this piece of hardware, right? There would be no Nintendo Switch, no Steam Deck without this piece of hardware. This is a history that deserves preserving and protecting. I'm sure I could sell it tomorrow, but I don't think I will. I feel like it's my duty and my responsibility to protect it and to take care of it, even to a greater level than I normally preserve and protect standard consoles, you know, an NES or a Genesis or a Master System or a Dreamcast or, you know, a PlayStation or an Xbox. I feel personally responsible for the protection of this particular device, and, you know, so that's what I'm going to do. But I also feel like that you guys should have the ability to see it and you know, at least see it up close, even if I won't let you put your grubby hands on it. Maybe see how it actually works, which would be pretty cool. You know, that would be pretty cool. So yeah, so that's the long-term future. The short-term future is, in the next stream, we're gonna break out the soldering iron. We're gonna clean this thing up a little bit more. We're gonna see if we can't get it functioning just a little bit better than it is. It's about a 50-50 toss-up now, and the reason I didn't plug it up is to save myself the embarrassment of plugging it up and it not working. However, I went ahead, oh crap, I can't even get a hold of them now. I went ahead and I drug out the cords so that I could plug it up. I put multiple power supplies in the floor, and now that it's apart, I don't want to do it. But we're gonna plug it up in the next one. I still got to figure out. So other than it's a 50% on it working, I do have another problem, and I'm hoping somebody more technical than me can help me. So this is my USB capture that connects consoles to my screen. Every time I connect this, it kills my microscope or it kills another camera. Somebody knows. And if you say a Retro Tink, I'm probably going to stab you because they're sold out right now. But if somebody knows of a way where I can USB capture or do another type of capture other than HDMI, I'm all ears. But if you do know and you can help me, I would greatly appreciate it. Guys, listen. No, that's enough. I appreciate you guys watching. I genuinely really do. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the comments. You guys were great today, man. Lots of activity, lots of action going on. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for coming and enjoying this part of this console's history with me. Thanks for participating in it. I appreciate that. As always, I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day, and I will definitely 100% see you guys on the next one. Oh, and go and subscribe. Like the button. Click the bell. Do the things. Jesus. No, seriously, man. Thanks for watching. See you guys on the next one.